If you're the kind of person who completely shuts down when someone hurts you not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply. That you're terrified of what might come out of your mouth if you actually speak, then what I'm about to share is going to make you feel understood in a way you probably haven't felt in a very long time. Because that silence everyone around you keeps calling cold or distant or manipulative, psychology has a completely different name for it. And once you understand what's really happening inside that quiet space, everything about yourself is going to start making sense. So, if you've ever said, I'm fine, when you absolutely weren't fine, if you've ever felt words pile up in your throat and refuse to come out, or if people have accused you of giving them the silent treatment when really you were just trying to hold yourself together, this video is for you. Stay with me. Misconception Destroyer. Let's start with what people get completely wrong about your silence. When you go quiet after being hurt, people assume you're playing mind games, being manipulative, trying to punish them, or you are just being difficult for the sake of being difficult. And if you've heard any version of you're stonewalling me, or this is so immature, or why can't you just communicate like an adult, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But here's what's actually happening inside you. And this is the part nobody sees. You haven't made some calculated decision to shut them out. You're not sitting there thinking, I'm going to make them suffer by not talking. That's not what this is at all. What's really happening is this: you've learned not from one conversation, not from one fight, but from dozens, maybe hundreds of small moments throughout your life that speaking when you're emotionally hurt doesn't bring you closer to people. It gives them ammunition. Think about it. How many times have you been honest about your feelings only to have those exact words twisted into something you never actually said? Minimize with you are too sensitive or you are overreacting. Brought up in a completely different argument weeks or even months later. Used as evidence that you're the real problem in the relationship. You watched your vulnerability get weaponized. You felt the sting of having your honest emotions turned into bullets that get fired back at you when you least expect it. So, your silence, it's not a weapon, it's a shield. You're not trying to hurt them, you're trying to protect yourself from being hurt in the exact same way again. And there's a massive difference between those two things, even if nobody around you can see it. The science, and here's the part that's going to blow your mind. While everyone around you sees stillness, sees you sitting there calm, composed, maybe even cold inside your head, there is a full scale analysis happening. Modern neuroscience has actually studied this, and what researchers found is that people who go quiet during emotional pain aren't thinking less than everyone else. They're thinking more, significantly more. While you're silent, your brain is actively running through every possible thing you could say, how each version of those words might land, what they'll probably say back, whether speaking right now will make things better or so much worse, whether this conversation is even worth the energy it's going to cost you. Brain imaging studies show that in people who process pain silently, the regions responsible for self reflection, predicting future outcomes, analyzing past memories, and regulating emotions, all of these areas are more active than in the average person. You're not sitting there doing nothing. You're running 1,000 simulations of the same conversation, trying to find one version that doesn't end in more pain. You're not avoiding the problem. You're trying to solve every possible version of it before you open your mouth. And that's not a character flaw. That's not emotional immaturity. That's actually a form of emotional intelligence most people never develop. You've just been made to feel broken for having it. The origins, but you weren't always like this, were you? Nobody's born believing that silence is safer than speaking, that staying quiet hurts less than being honest. That's a lesson you learned, And it usually starts in one of three very specific ways. Maybe you grew up in a home where emotions weren't welcome, where crying meant you were being dramatic, where anger was disrespect that got you punished, where sadness was treated like an inconvenience everyone else had to deal with. So you learned a very simple equation: keep it inside equals keep the peace. You figured out early that expressing what you felt didn't lead to comfort or understanding. It led to lectures or dismissal, or sometimes even worse, being told you were the problem for feeling that way in the first place. So you stopped. Not because you stopped feeling things, but because showing those feelings out loud kept costing you something you couldn't afford to lose. Or maybe your silence didn't start in childhood. Maybe it started later, in a relationship where you tried being vulnerable with someone you trusted completely. And they took that vulnerability and used it to guilt trip you later, threw it back in your face during arguments, made you feel like opening up was a mistake. You should have known better than to make. Maybe you shared your deepest insecurity, and weeks later, in the middle of a fight, they used that exact insecurity to hurt you where they knew it would cut the deepest. And in that moment, your nervous system made a decision: never again. Speaking up doesn't bring closeness, it hands someone else the knife. Or maybe your silence came from something quieter, not one big betrayal, but a slow accumulation of moments where you tried to speak and realized nobody was actually listening. You'd start to explain how you felt and get interrupted, or you'd finish talking and they'd immediately explain why you were wrong to feel that way. Or they'd nod along while you could see in their eyes that they were already planning what they wanted to say next. You learned that people don't want to understand you. They want you to hurry up and be okay so they can stop feeling uncomfortable. So you stopped making them uncomfortable. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying. Because why waste the energy when nothing you say actually changes anything? And here's the thing I need you to understand: your younger self wasn't being dramatic when you learned these lessons. Your younger self wasn't being weak. Your younger self was being intelligent. You adapted to survive in environments where speaking your truth had a cost, where honesty didn't bring connection, it brought pain. And that adaptation worked. It protected you then, it got you through. The only problem is it's still protecting you now, even when the danger is gone, even when the person in front of you isn't the one who taught you to be silent. Protecting others. Now, here's the part that might surprise you the most, the part that almost nobody talks about. A huge part of why you go silent isn't actually to protect yourself, it's to protect them. You know yourself well enough to recognize when your hurt is still too fresh, when your emotions are flooding your entire system, when the words sitting right there on the edge of your tongue are the ones that would cause damage you can't undo. You've felt it, haven't you? That surge of sharp, almost electric energy that says, I could destroy them right now. I know exactly what to say. I know their insecurities. I know where it would hurt most. But you don't say it. Not because you can't, because you choose not to. Because you're strong enough to know something that a lot of people never learn. Words said in pain don't just hurt in the moment, they create scars that last for years. You could win the argument. You could say the thing that would make them finally shut up and leave you alone. But you also know that once those words are out, you can't take them back. You can't unsay them. And the trust you've spent months or years building could shatter in a single sentence. So you hold it, you wait, you let the storm rage inside you where only you can feel it. And most people completely misread this. They think your silence is you being cold, you punishing them, you not caring enough to fight for the relationship. But it's actually the opposite. Your silence is one of the most loving things you know how to do. You're containing your pain so it doesn't become their wound. Even when it costs you being completely misunderstood, even when they accuse you of the exact opposite of what you're actually doing. You stay quiet because you care too much to speak carelessly. And if nobody's ever told you this before, that's not emotional unavailability. That's emotional maturity that most people spend their whole lives never developing. The painful irony. But Here's the painful irony that nobody talks about. The one thing that would actually help you open up, the one thing that would make words start to feel safe again, is almost always the exact opposite of what actually happens. When you go quiet, what do people do? They follow you from room to room. They stand outside the door asking, "What's wrong?" over and over. They say, "You can't just shut me out like this." They accuse you of being unfair, of playing games, of not caring about their feelings. And every single time that happens, it confirms the exact belief that made you go silent in the first place. My way of processing isn't acceptable. My emotions are only valid if they're immediate, if they're verbal, if they're available on everyone else's timeline. If I can't perform my feelings right now, on demand, then I'm the problem. But here's what you actually need. And this is so simple, it sounds almost too easy. You don't need someone to fix you. You don't need someone to pull the words out of you. You don't need a lecture about communication skills. What you need is someone who can sit with you and say, "I can see you're overwhelmed right now. I don't know exactly what you're feeling, but I can see that it's a lot. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And when you're ready, not when I think you should be ready, but when you're ready, I'll be here to listen without judgment." And then actually mean it. Actually give you that space without resentment, without passive aggressive comments, without making you feel guilty for needing time to process. Because here's what happens when that pressure finally lifts. When you feel someone trust your process instead of questioning it, when you realize they're not going to weaponize your silence against you later. When you finally feel safe, that's when words start to come back. Not because anyone forced them, not because you white knuckled your way through the fear, but because, for the first time in a long time, your nervous system recognized, "Oh, it's actually safe to speak here." Validation bomb. If you're still watching this and something inside you just softened a little bit, like someone finally handed you language for something you've been carrying alone for years, maybe even decades, I need you to hear this. You are not broken. You are not too much to handle. You are not bad at communication. You're not emotionally immature or avoidant or any of the other labels people have tried to put on you. What you are is someone who learned very, very early in life that not all spaces are safe for your truth. Not all people can hold your vulnerability without breaking it. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is protect your heart by keeping it quiet. That survival skill you developed, it got you here. It kept you intact through things that could have destroyed you. But here's the beautiful thing you might not realize yet. You don't have to live in survival mode forever. There are people in this world, not many, maybe, but they exist who won't rush you, who won't twist your words, who won't make your silence about them. People who will sit in the quiet with you and understand that your silence isn't rejection. It's just your nervous system taking the time it needs to feel safe enough to let words form again. And you deserve people like that in your life. Not because you need to be fixed, not because there's something wrong with the way you process pain, but because you've always deserved to be understood exactly as you are. Your silence doesn't make you difficult, it makes you deep. And in a world where most people react without thinking, where words are thrown around carelessly and emotions are performed for an audience, you are someone who feels everything, considers everything, and speaks only when you have something real to say. That's not a weakness. That's rare. That's valuable. That's exactly what this world needs more of. If this video made you feel seen, even just a little bit, I want to invite you to do something. Go down to the comments right now and just type 3 words. This is me. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to tell your whole story. You don't have to justify why you relate to this. Just let yourself be witnessed. Let yourself be part of a community of people who finally understand what it's like to carry a storm inside, while the world only sees calm. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with speaking everything out loud to everyone around you. Sometimes it starts with a quiet recognition that you're not alone, that there are thousands of other people who process pain exactly the way you do, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of you. And if you want more videos like this, videos that actually understand the parts of you the world usually gets completely wrong. Hit that subscribe button. This channel is for the deep processors, the overthinkers, the people who feel everything intensely but say very little, the ones who've been made to feel like their way of moving through the world is somehow broken. You're not broken, you're not too quiet, you're not too much. You're exactly what the world needs more of. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself. You're safe even when you can't speak.